I couldn't help myself. I've been in North Carolina all week. Do you know they don't have oil in North Carolina? We went to an auto parts store. We needed some oil. And he said, "What you need is some oil." I can't even say it right. Anyway, it was a fun experience being there. Different world. And makes me smile. Makes me smile. You got to love barbecue. Barbecue. I'm sorry. I need Dwayne to help me. Barbecue. I can make a little bit of fun of them since most of my relatives are in Texas. So we're in the very last chapter of Romans. And next week, we're going to start a brand new series. I'm really excited about it. And there's some people that are helping me with it, and so I want to remind you of our meeting right after church in my office, or shortly thereafter, or sometime after, or whenever I happen to get in there. But the new series is called Transformers, and that's all I'm going to tell you about it, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to do some fun, creative things, and maybe we'll show the Transformer movie, I don't know. But Romans 16 has just got some really interesting things in it, and I'm really excited to finish up this book in this particular chapter, because at the end it makes sense, doesn't it? But I just want to show you a few things in here, and then share some observations that came out of my study of this last chapter. And I'm not going to read it to you because, first of all, there's a lot of names in here that I can't even pronounce, and but it's just a huge list of names. But right in the middle, I want to just point out a couple things right in the middle before I actually get into the meat of what I talk about. In verse 19, he said, "Everyone has heard about your obedience, so I rejoice because of you, but I want you to be wise about what is good and innocent about what is evil." Isn't that great? Isn't that great words? Wise about what is good and innocent about what is evil. I mean, there's so many times that we come up to something, maybe it's a movie or a book or whatever, and we think, this is whatever, I can just ignore this or whatever. But what's important is that we're wise about what is good and innocent about what is evil. Isn't that a great verse you should underline in your Bible? And then right below that, he says, "The God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet." That is incredibly profound. We live in a world that presumes that force is what brings peace. And God says that what brings peace is God. We live in a world that we think that stress and turmoil we need to put down with force. And God says the answer to stress and to turmoil and dissension and wars and riots is peace, not force. And even, we're sort of geared that way when we are confronted, when something happens to us, adrenaline starts pouring into our body, and the first thing we want to do is react. And sometimes people react violently. But God says that the answer to stress, to striving, to turmoil is God. It's peace. That's just a great little word there right in the middle. But I want to talk to you about these people. And there's an incredible list of people here with all kinds of names. One summer, we were traveling with our kids through southern Utah, I think it was, somewhere east of the Grand Canyon. And we came to this national park, which is in this valley. And it was a settlement in this valley that the only way originally you could get to it was to go down this riverbed. And it was a Mormon settlement, and they went into this huge canyon, and they were pretty safe there because you could only get down there through this one canyon, and most of the year the canyon was full of water. You couldn't even get in there. So they were kind of safe. And in the dry seasons, there was a way that you could go down the riverbed. And we walked down that riverbed for a while, and it was just steep rock sites. But all along, way up high, you could see people had written their names. They'd stood on the side of their wagons, and they'd written their names up there. And there was just these hundreds and hundreds of names all along this wall there. Names are so interesting, aren't they? We didn't even have last names until probably a couple hundred years ago. And last names sort of evolved because there was the need to isolate and identify people. And some last names came as a result of people's occupation. Can you think of some examples of that? Smith, Baker, what was that? Van Shank is cupbearer. Oh, okay. I think I did know that, but forgot. What else? Shoemaker, someone said? Miller? Thatcher, that's right. Yeah. What was that one? Hooper. Oh, yeah. Interesting. Good. Carpenter? Mm-hmm. Baker? So a lot of them came out of occupation. Some of them came from regions. Think of some that came from regions, like West, obviously, or there are people with the last name of West and people with the last name of East, North. I don't know if there's anybody with the last name of South. There's some regions of the land. Can't think of an illustration, but river, yeah, river, riverside. I don't know. Yeah. Some people think Morris actually came from the Moors, but in reality it didn't. Just discovered that in the past few years. So yeah, regions, and then there was also sometimes it's relational, like Johnson, Robertson. I was trying to think and find an illustration of a daughter, someone's daughter, and sadly I couldn't find one. But curiously, in Iceland. Oh, okay. Icelandic, you're such and such's daughter. Oh, interesting. Okay. Which is interesting because in Jewish tradition, if you are Jew, it's because your mother was a Jew. It's irrelevant who your father was, but if you want to be Jewish, you have to have a Jewish mother or be a proselyte. You can be proselytized into the Jewish faith, but to be born a Jew, you have to have had a Jewish mother. Interesting enough. So names speak a great deal about who we are. And as I was researching these names, I found some really interesting things. Let me just tell you some of the things that I found about names. I apologize, I may not be saying these correctly. When I get to heaven, they'll have to correct me. But Epanetus in verse 4 was Paul's first convert in Asia Minor. Evidently, he moved later to Rome. Mary was a hardworking Christian woman. Andronicus and Junia are either a brother and sister or a husband and wife. That's in verse 7. And Paul refers to them also as a missionary team. He calls them kinsmen because they're also Jewish. And but we also know that they came to Christ before he did. The next four names, Ampliatus, Urbanus, Statius, Apelles, were all common slave names, some Roman and some were Greek. The next three names, Aristobulus, Herodion, Narcissus, seem to have some connection to maybe imperial households in Rome, so they may have been more upper class, aristocratic. A lot of people think that Tryphena and Tryphosa were sisters and possibly twins. And their name root comes from a word that means dainty or delicate, perhaps suggesting they were also from the aristocratic background. But Paul calls them in verse 12 hard workers in the Lord. Persis means woman of Persia in verse 12. Rufus in verse 13 is interesting because Mark mentions Simon of Cyrene, who carried Jesus' cross, had two sons, Alexander and Rufus. And since Paul's gospel, or Mark's gospel, seems to have written to Rome, it's possible that this Rufus was Simon's son. Don't know for sure, but it's possible. His mother had become like a mother to Paul in some ways, showing him kindness and perhaps, having him at her house, taking care of him while he was on the missionary journey. Paul mentions then two groups of names in verses 14 to 16. The first group, Asyncritus, Philogon, Hermas, Patrobus, and Hermas were all men, and may have been sort of like a men's group of some kind. Maybe that was the first mighty men group. So it's kind of cool, it lumps them all together. And then the second group, Philologus, Julia, Nerusus, and his sister Olympas, could have possibly been another sort of a small group somewhere in Rome, maybe another house church or something. Not positive, but they're kind of lumped together. So in this list, we have the breadth of humanity, really, located in this. We have people who seem to be slaves, people who seem to be aristocrats. We have Jews, we have Greeks, we have Romans, people from Syria. And so there's this huge melting pot of individuals. I was reading an article this week about one of the advantages of a small church is that you get to know more people. And at first I thought, really? And then the more I thought about that, I realized that that's probably true because in a large church, people tend to find people like themselves. You're kind of lost in the hugeness of it all, and you can't possibly get to know everyone, so you seek out people that you have some commonality with, people that maybe are also do the same sort of work you do, or same age that you are, or that have kids. And so there tends to be this grouping of people with similar likes and tastes in larger churches. In a small church, you pretty much get to know everyone. And so you may be talking to somebody who's a generation younger than you or a generation older than you. You may be talking to somebody who works as an engineer or somebody who works in administration. You can have someone who's teaching kids talking to somebody who's cleaning buildings, or you can have somebody who's driving a truck talking to somebody who's works in a lawyer's office or in administration or working with elderly, or just this huge gamut of people that you have interaction with. And so I think that's one great benefit of a small church. I think that large churches have other benefits, but one of the great benefits of being in a smaller church is that you have this amazing connection to people that are so diverse. And even in this congregation, I was sitting there thinking about the diversity we have. It's incredible. It's amazing. We have people from every economic class. We have people who are somewhat racially different. The vast majority of us are one race, but we do have some racial diversity. And we have some incredible economic diversity and a vocational diversity. And so I think that's a great statement about who God's family is, and who's a part of God's family, and about the importance of actually relating and connecting to people that are different from us and learning about them and interacting with them. And so that's just a great benefit. The other thing I was thinking about was names themselves. And I believe that our names are intentional. I don't think that it's happenstance. I think that God intervenes on behalf of parents and leads them to give us the names that we have, because I think that we'll have our names for eternity. It's not just a random thing that happens. I don't think when we get to heaven we'll be 056947. I think I will still look at you and say, yeah, that's Jolenda, that's Tim, that's Victor, that's Jack. I think our names are important. And so I think it's important that you appreciate the name that you were given. How many of you know what your name means? A few of you. You should know what your name means. Some of them are amazingly powerful. If your name doesn't have a meaning, you should ask God, God, give me a meaning for my name. My name, Jonathan, means God has given. It's a Hebrew name, and it is actually not connected to John. John is not an abbreviation of Jonathan. They're two separate Hebrew names. And the word John means God is gracious. And so they have different meanings, and they're actually not connected. Some people do call me John, and I'm not offended by that, but it's like me calling Tim Sam. It's just a different name. Just don't call me late for dinner. Yeah. So, I think it's important to understand, why did God choose that name for me? In Old Testament times, children didn't receive their names until at least 30 days after they were born. And the reason is because the parents wanted to examine them and watch them and to see what sort of person they had, because they believed that the name was a statement about their personality. And so I think that that's important, but I also believe that God intervenes on his children's behalf, and he assigns us names, and our names are really important to us. God has given you a name, and God has given you a heritage, and He has made you part of a family which has a name as well. And I'm not huge into genealogy, but I think that there's probably some significance to the fact that God brought us down the path through history that brought us to the place we are today. And God made us uniquely who we are. God makes every person unique, and your name is unique, your personage is unique as well. When you get to heaven, I believe you're going to have the same body. You're going to look like you do now. Sort of. Somewhat. I don't know about the age. I think what's sad of you making that statement is, and some of you making comments about it, is that most people, when they look in the mirror, are not happy with what they see. I wish I was taller. I have always wished I was a couple inches taller. I was on a little tiny plane this week, and I was brushing my hair, and I was thinking, oh, thank God I'm not any taller. But the reason that we feel that way isn't because there's something wrong with us. It's because from the time we were a child, we've been given these parameters as to what beauty is. This is what beauty looks like. And so with these parameters, our whole life we've measured ourselves. And we've compared ourselves to everyone else. And I believe that when we get to heaven, we'll have a true understanding of what beauty is. And we'll look at ourselves in the mirror and we'll go, wow, God, I'm so odd that you made me, me. There's not another person that has ever been created in all of history, in all of the entire history of mankind, the billions and billions of people, no one has looked like me. And I think that when we recognize that about ourselves, and we recognize that God made us who we are, and God gave us this name, He named us individually. He took this particular body, He took your body, He gave it a name, and He said, that's my daughter, that's my son, and they are incredibly beautiful. I think that it's important that we value our bodies. I think it's important that we take care of our bodies. I don't think that if we have too much to eat or if we're not very healthy, it's a sin. I think that it's more something that's sad. I think that it's just something that's sad. I don't think that it's sin. I think that the reason that we are that way is because we're broken. And we live in a broken environment. We were raised broken. And we have some genes that are broken. And that will get repaired in eternity. That part of us, we will step through eternity and we will see the best of ourselves. And we'll be able to go, wow, I'm so happy to be me. And I believe that you can begin to move that way today. I believe that you can begin to say, God, I want to see myself as the person that you chose, who you named, who you gave me to be. So this morning, I don't know how many of you have ever heard God whisper your name. I hope you have. It's just the most precious, wonderful thing. I've had it happen just on a few occasions. I've been somewhere alone where it's been really, really quiet, and I've heard God whisper my name. And every time I turn around, because I thought there was somebody there, I don't know if you've had that, but I hope that you have. And if you haven't, look for the quiet places. Look for those places where it's just deathly silent, and listen. And I believe that God will probably whisper your name to you in a way that no one else possibly can. Because you are precious, you are special, you are exactly who God intended you to be. And your name is exactly who it was supposed to be. And I believe that we are supposed to live now in a reflection of what eternity is going to look like. And if in any way you look in the mirror and you say, I'm unhappy, you should start to change. And you start looking in the mirror and say, God, thank you. Thank you that I'm exactly this high, this wide, with this smile. I want to take you into a hymn as you mull on this and think about this. use this hymn and the words of this hymn to bring you on a journey to that place of loving yourself deeper. It's 379. And let's sing verses 1, 3, and 6. Stand with me. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my voice and let me sing, always only for my King. Take my lips and let them be filled